Hey y'all, this is Darren Van Dam, and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that connects you with the best movies to stream, and today we're talking about all the best stuff Netflix is adding in August 2022. So August is actually a huge month for Netflix this year. Longtime subscribers know I tell you when there's not a lot getting added. There are so many movies getting added. I've got over 30 on this list I want to talk about. So I'm going to blast through all of the familiar favorites that they add on the first. These are all movies you've likely heard of. And then we're going to go through the rest of the month in chronological order, talking about all the new stuff they're going to be adding. Again, over 30 movies discussed in this video, and one of Netflix's most anticipated series of all time gets added on the 5th. We're going to be talking about all of it, starting with everything getting added on the 1st. For action fans, one of my top picks of the month is going to be Hardcore Henry. This has been on Netflix before, but it returns, and it's one of the most balls-to-the-wall action movies you're going to see on the platform. It's all filmed from a first-person perspective. They use the special camera on a stuntman's head, and it makes for an incredibly immersive action movie experience. If you've never seen it, again, one of my top picks for the month. They're also going to be adding Battle Los Angeles, which is a pretty cool alien invasion movie. You will need to turn your brain off for it, but it is kind of cool that it looks like Black Hawk Down and there's aliens and UFOs everywhere. Constantine has kind of become a classic over the years. I've actually recently rewatched it, and this movie does hold up. It's got some incredible visuals in it, and Peter Stormare's performance as the devil is just top-notch stuff. It's one of my favorite characters he's ever done.
No accounting for taste, really.
They're also going to be adding the Men in Black trilogy. That's all 3 movies with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, which the first 2 in that trilogy are some of the best Spider-Man movies ever made. Still, even with the new Tom Holland ones being as good as they are, the first 2 Spider-Man movies still hold up as some of the best. If that's too much action for you, they're going to be adding The Age of Adeline, which is a lesser-known movie starring Blake Lively as this woman who's rendered ageless after an accident. Essentially, she's immortal. And considering it's about someone with immortality, it's pretty touchy-feely. This is actually more of a romantic movie. So if you're a fan of hers or those types of movies, this is going to be a top pick for you. She's also featured in The Town, which I consider to be one of the best heist movies ever made. I would maybe put it top 5 all time. I love that movie. If you've never seen it, another one of my top picks for the month. And so is Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. This is a movie that took a while to grow on me. There's so many little nuances in it that do take a while to grasp, meaning the first viewing could be a little dry, a little lackluster, if you will. But the more time you spend thinking about this movie, the more complicated it becomes. I consider it to be far from Stanley Kubrick's best, but being his last movie, it still is top-notch Kubrick. And then finally for dramas, they're also going to be adding 8 Mile, which stars Eminem and is actually a fantastic movie. This is really well written and directed. If you've never seen it, it is miles better than you would expect it to be. Brittany Murphy stands out in this movie in particular. So whether you've got an interest in Eminem or not, this could make a great watch for you this month, especially if you've never seen it. And then they're going to be adding a bunch of comedies this month as well, including both Bridget Jones movies, Dinner for Schmucks, which I actually think is a pretty underrated movie. Paul Rudd and Steve Carell are both great in it, but you also get just a bonkers performance from Zach Galifianakis in this movie. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the classic that I would imagine everybody watching this video has seen. As well as Miss Congeniality, Tower Heist, and the original Space Jam. Per usual, the full list of all the movies and shows I'm talking about can be found in the top pinned comment down below, not the video description, but let's go ahead and move on with the rest of the month. Immediately on August 2nd, they add Flight, starring Denzel Washington. This is actually directed by Robert Zemeckis, who is one of the best directors in history. I mean, Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Forrest Gump. The list is almost endless, and while Flight is not one of his more well-known movies, it was superbly directed by him. Denzel Washington is great as always, and this movie's not really about the plane crash that kicks the story off. It ends up going in a different direction, and I thought the entire movie was just, again, miles better than I expected. On the 3rd, they add CLUSTERF K Woodstock 99. It's all about the 1999 Woodstock event where there were fires and sexual assaults and pure chaos. but MTV did a really good documentary, or at least an hour special on this years back. It was really well produced. I can't imagine this is going to be too much better, but who knows. And then on August 5th, they add quite a few things, including The Sandman, which is one of the most highly anticipated Netflix original series of all time.
My creations do not walk amongst the living, killing mortals for pleasure.
Oh, you don't think dreams can die? Let's find out.
This is based on a popular 1990s comic book series called The Sandman, written by Neil Gaiman, who would go on to become an incredibly noteworthy fantasy writer. I mean, he's also known for Good Omens, American Gods, and Lucifer, just to name a few. And The Sandman is one of his most beloved properties. David S. Goyer is also involved with the development of this. He's most famous for writing The Dark Knight and Dark City. So again, there's just this incredible production going on here, and you've got some Game of Thrones alumni in the mix. I mean, this is shaping up to be not only one of their most anticipated, but one of their best fantasy series ever. But that's not it for the 5th. They're also going to be adding a Korean action flick called Carter. Typically, the Korean movies on Netflix are dubbed really well, and even when they're not, the productions are still so good, they're well worth watching. I typically watch more of the crime gangster movies from South Korea, but this action flick definitely has me interested for August. For the kids, they're going to be adding a new Ninja Turtles movie, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The animation style and everything looks kind of cool. This should be a fun one to watch if you've got young kids, particularly young boys. If there hadn't been enough action on this list already, Skyfall gets added on the 5th as well. This is my favorite James Bond movie. I'm partial to some of the older ones. I have ones that I like. This one has held up as my favorite. I like almost everything about this movie. And then my last pick on the 5th is The Informer. This is actually a pretty cool crime flick. It's got some big stars in it, but it was actually buried when it was released. I believe it went straight to streaming. It may have had a small theater run, and it's because it's got some odd story elements that really don't quite work. But if you can look past all that, this is a pretty cool recent release crime flick that is coming to Netflix. However, it's been on Prime Video for a while. August 9th brings one of my favorite movies from the past 10 years, The Nice Guys. This was written and directed by Shane Black, who is most famous for having written the entirety of the Lethal Weapon series. He also wrote and directed a really killer movie called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, starring Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer. I would consider The Nice Guys to be just as good as that gem. Ryan Gosling is particularly funny in this. If you really enjoyed his performance in The Gray Man, this is one of his funniest roles and one of the funniest movies he's ever been involved in. I also consider it to be highly rewatchable, so if you have seen it, check it out again. I'm telling you, there's some killer lines in this movie that make it well worth rewatching. The 10th brings Lock & Key Season 3. This too is based on a popular comic book series that actually had a one-time crossover with The Sandman. If my description of that show wasn't nerdy enough already, there's some extra nerdness for you. And then August 11th brings one I'm particularly excited to see, Dope. This came out several years ago and I just happened to miss it. It sort of disappeared off the radar before I could see it. And this is an indie film with a first-time director that actually went on to work on a bunch of Mandalorian episodes and has a bunch of new projects on the horizon. So I'm excited to see this one. It's kind of a coming-of-age teen comedy that is supposed to be exceptional. The 12th adds another one of my top picks for the month, Day Shift, starring Jamie Foxx.
Vampires just tried to kill me. Now I just pissed my favorite
Hey, everybody pisses themselves the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you?
No, I didn't, but listen, look, you did.
This is a bloodfest of a vampire movie. This comes from first-time director J.J. Perry, who is a famous Hollywood stuntman. I've actually followed him on Instagram for years, and he posted a lot of stuff from the set of Day Shift, and it looks like they had a blast making this movie. My prediction is this will be a really fun watch for Netflix, especially if you turn your brain off and just enjoy some of the visuals. Again, this is directed by a longtime stuntman, so I'd imagine a lot of the action is going to be top-notch in this movie. The 19th adds the next 365 days. If you don't know, this is the third installment in this erotic Polish trilogy that are largely considered some of the worst movies ever made. I actually did a video on the first installment. I hated that movie so much. If you want to save yourself the pain of watching these movies, you could just check out that video. I'll put a link in the top pinned comment next to 365 days. And right below that will be my next pick, Uncharted, which was supposed to get added last month. That rarely happens that something gets pushed back an entire month, but this is a pretty fun action-adventure movie. I will say I was a big fan of the games. They were some of the best action-adventure games ever created, and the movie doesn't quite do the games justice, but on its own, Tom Holland's pretty great in this movie, and some of the action, while it is incredibly over the top, it's still really fun to watch, especially for something on Netflix. It's worth stating that Mark Wahlberg's in this movie as well, and while I am a fan of his, he's a little wooden here, but he also stars in a movie with Kevin Hart that comes out later in August. Hopefully he's a little more animated in that one. Speaking of animated though, there is a new limited series for the family that looks like one of the most interesting family things Netflix has added in quite a while, Lost Ollie. This is a mixture of live action and animation, and it's little stuffed animals, and the look of this thing is pretty incredible. And it is a limited series, which means it could make for a great watch with the kids. I thoroughly enjoyed watching Man vs. Bee, which just came out last month. Me and my son had a blast watching that. Hopefully we have at least half as much fun watching Lost Ollie. Then on the 26th, they add Disobedience, which is a few years old now, but it's about a couple of women in the Orthodox Jewish community that have an attraction to each other, and they're actually both played by Rachel Weisz and Rachel McAdams, and this has got pretty good reviews. It is not a movie I have seen, but definitely looks like a solid pick getting added this month. And then they add Me Time, which is the Mark Wahlberg, Kevin Hart movie. Now, I will say some of the Kevin Hart stuff that has been added to Netflix has been less than great, but some of it has been really fantastic, particularly the movie Fatherhood and True Story, the limited series that he did. So it's kind of a toss-up as to whether or not this is going to be a good one, but it does look like it could be a pretty solid buddy comedy. August 30th adds I Am a Killer Season 3, if you've been keeping up with that docuseries. It's a little tiresome for me, but if you like true crime stuff, this is going to be one of the top picks in that category for this month. And then finally on the 31st, they add a new Netflix original movie called I Came By. Now this is a thriller with a pretty good cast for a Netflix original movie, and it's from the same director as Under the Shadow, an Iranian horror movie that is fantastic. So while it's not one of my top picks of the month, I am very interested to see it. If it stands out, you can guarantee you're going to see it on future lists here on the channel. Speaking of future lists, if you're still watching this video, definitely consider clicking the subscribe button and the little bell icon. That way you get notified when videos like this release so you don't miss the movies and shows before they're gone. But thanks for checking out this special Netflix episode, and you will see me on the next one.